Okay, just making some points here. I'm making this thing about spirituality versus religion. I got quite a few articles about it, that I've written, from maybe 10 years ago to now, and I have, updated ideas. But a lot of people ask about what's the difference between spirituality versus religion. So I'm going to make this blog about that. And first off, like I said, there's no way to when you bring up stuff about religion, there's no way you're not going to offend people. But I want to let people know this is my opinion. I got these opinions from myself. I wasn't. In other words, this is me observing life, different things in life, people's behavior in life, observing nature, and coming to what I believe is the very genuine, unbiased conclusion. So here we go. So anyway, spirituality versus religion. I got my paper here. I got my paper of points that I want to make. So the first point, spirituality versus religion. Well, what's the difference? Well, first of all, let's get a real generic difference. Number one, religion is man-made. Okay, so religion is made from man. Well, men made it. Okay, and spirituality is something that people are born with. Okay, well, gee whiz, that's already confusing, right? Well, let's take a look at it. So it goes like this. So spirituality is we're born with it. So how are we born with spirituality? Well, every single culture that ever existed, and this is even before written language. This is prehistoric times. Just you go see a different types of prehistoric men, Neanderthals or Cro-Magnon or whatever, and what you'll see is that there's evidence of culture, and within that culture is a spiritual lining to that culture. In other words, a lot of their culture is based on spirituality, and you can see this in when you see an anthropologist dig up some of their findings. You'll see all these different artifacts and relics that are not only propagated and created for religious, not religious, spiritual utilization. So in other words, symbology and all that. So that's where you have it. A lot of people, well, that's the birth of religion. No, that religion and spirituality are not the same. So spirituality is, in other words, spirituality is basically, um, spirituality is the quest for God. So people go through it. That's why there's so many different early religions when they first pop up. Is because they're starting to base it on the primitive, um, you know, um, instincts. Because every culture in the world, there was never a culture that just grew up, atheistic. It wasn't that way. We were all asking the same questions as soon as we became sentient and self-aware. Where did we come from? Where am I going? What's my purpose here? Those three. Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's my purpose here? And from those questions became spirituality. So those are primal instincts that have been embedded in mankind since before we were men. They're so old. Before we were even really human at that time, those questions were there. They became there. They established themselves as a staple as soon as we became self-aware and sentient. So that's how old spirituality is. So spirituality is with us and evolved with us all the way to modern times. Okay, now let's get to religion. Okay, religion is people who start taking spiritual ideas and they organize it. That's why it's called organized religion. So when they organize those spiritual ideas, they come up with all these nifty ideas of how I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I'm going to, they mix it with reality and myth and what have you, and fiction and reality, and they come up with all this stuff. Okay, that's just the truth of it. And then what they do is they come up with these holy texts, and then they'll go about long processes of editing these texts as other people build onto them throughout the time. All right. So and then they build religions, you know. Not to be confused with church. I'm going to get back to this, by the way. Church and religion are also not the same, but there are religions that are organized religions, and they're made by men. Okay, these are guys who took spirituality and perverted spirituality to fit their own benefit. Okay, so all religions in the world, all of them, not some, all religions in the world, all of them, all the mainstream religions, all the little cults, they are made to control people's behavior. That's it. You want to get mad about it, get mad about it, but it's the truth. So basically what religions do is they organize. There's a reason why they're called organized religions. What do you think? They're organizing themselves? They're organizing you. So what they're doing is they're setting rules and regulations, the do's and don'ts. You do this, you want to be a part of us, you do this. And if you're a part of us, our congregation will accept you, and if they accept you, we'll benefit you by this. That's how we reward you by having you as a part of our congregation. Back in old school days, they used to actually have beneficial stuff. Nowadays, they hardly ain't. Yeah. They're just right now. They're just at the point of just trying to get as many converts as they can, like any cult would. So that's what they're doing. And religion is all about controlling people's behavior. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, if you control people's behavior, you control it all. That's number one. So if you look at all these crazy people, like say Jim Jones and David Koresh and all this, you have people that are two types of people. Some people are true believers. They're just insane. They think they're God, or some people are just pure con artists. They don't. They're really atheists, but they're playing like they're preachers. They're pretending to be preachers, and they're getting stuff from you. So what do they get? They get power. They get sex and money. Really, it's always those two. It's sex and money. So they'll develop some kind of fetish or whatever, and then they could take somebody and do all these sexual acts with them, and no one will. They can abuse people, do whatever they want to do because they have the power to do it. So they indulge themselves in sex and money and property and all this other stuff, and it's always the same. It's always the same reason. So they're basically evil people. It's basically what they are. Religious leaders like that. So organized religion, when they get really, really huge, then you have a split. Now, what we call a schism or split. So basically, the schism or split is where some of the churches actually do good. Okay, like the Catholics, for example. Catholics can go all the way back to pretty much the first Christians. Not all the way there, but pretty close. And so some of those factions are good, and some of those it goes to the same personal preferences. Some people that if you have a church that's ran by a person that's more good natured, they're going to produce more positive moral results. People that are ran by corrupt people, they raise corrupt results. So it just goes that way, just like it would with anything else. So some religions actually serve a good purpose for good causes, charity and helping the needy and stuff like that. So in that way, I'm not saying all religions are bad. If they're out there doing it, they're doing some good. But don't ever make the mistake of thinking just because they're doing those good things, those charity works, that they're not motivated by behavioral control. They are. Yeah, that means Catholics, everybody else. They're motivated by power and control. That's what it is. And there's always an elite. There's always an elite. So there's always like a pope, or there's a bishop or something, somebody higher than another person, whatever. So what's the problem with this? Well, one of the things is that when you look at early Christianity, I'm going to give you an example because I am a cultist, okay? I'm not somebody trying to say so-and-so and blah, 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 and I'm a good Christian. I'm not a good Christian. I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm not. But I am a Christian, believe it or not. My thing is, my Jesus Christ is not your Jesus Christ. We're not worshiping the same Jesus. We're worshiping two different entities. So I'm worshiping historical Jesus. That's what I'm doing. So I'm worshiping Jesus Christ as a man, as a living person who existed in the world, which he did. A lot of atheists think he didn't. He didn't because they're getting confused between mythic Jesus. So like 90% of the world, almost 100%. worship mythological Jesus Christ. Okay, so all right. So what is the difference between the two Jesus Christ? Well, mythological Jesus Christ is the Christ that was made after Jesus Christ actually died. And mostly mythic Jesus is a few hundred years after Christ died. Okay. So that's the mythological Jesus. Okay, that's the Jesus Christ that's doing the miracles and walking on water and all this and that. So what's the problem with this? This has to do with people taking the Bible literally. Okay, so let me break this down with the two Jesus Christ here. So, for instance, I worship what I believe, in my opinion, is the original Jesus Christ. That means Jesus Christ walking on the earth as a human being with no supernatural powers. So there was no, and the Jesus Christ I worship is not, turning water to wine or making gazillions of fish in fish baskets and, whatever. None of that, supernatural, cartoonish stuff. Yeah, I like to term it as cartoony. I don't mean to be, disrespectful, but I mean, I don't believe that Jesus Christ did any of those cartoony things. I don't think he ever said he did. Okay. So, how does this work? Well, Jesus Christ taught in parables. Okay, he says this in the New Testament. Because he teaches in parables. What are parables? Parables are stories, man. They're metaphors and analogies. Okay, so you get, there's a parable of the Good Samaritan. There's a parable. Well, we just said it when Jesus walked on water. He walked on water, and there's a storm. Disciple falls off the boat. He's sneaking, picks him up. Okay, well, here's the thing. There's morals in those stories. They're extremely important. Yeah. So they're really important that we're reminded of those morals. Because if you don't get reminded of morality, what we do as humans is we become indifferent. And I want you to remember that word, because that's one of the things that spirituality does to us. That's good. It stops us from becoming indifferent. Indifferent means you don't care whether it is or whether or not. That's how people go. Well, it's like you see somebody get hit by a car in the street and you just keep walking. Well, it's not my kid. It's not my fault. That's indifference. Okay, believe me, people will turn that way without spirituality. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people go, well, you don't need religions to be moral. No, you don't. But what religion does, what spirituality does, is reminds us to be moral. I have a lot of atheists who do that. Well, you don't need to be. You're absolutely 100% right. You don't. But most of the time, if you're not reminded, you grow up. You will grow up to be indifferent. Well, why do I care about this? It doesn't affect me. Okay. Now that happens. That's how the world mostly is right now. So spirituality is important, not religion. Spirituality. So religion is man-made. Spirituality is not man-made. Spirituality has been there since before we were even human, all the way. So it's always been there. So that's the difference, okay? Now, spirituality is about the quest to find God. And the reason why people have so many different religions is because, remember, religions came about when they started to take spirituality and make their own ideas on top of spirituality and try to interpret what in other words, what religion, it became the quest for God. There's a quest for God. Everybody's doing it, searching for God. And so what they do is they have their own ideas, and then that's fine. That's still spirituality. But what happens is when you refine those ideas, and then you start putting a purpose behind the rituals, now it's no longer spirituality. It's called religion. And those rituals, regulations, and rules, 3 R's. Remember that. Rituals, regulations, and rules. They're not part of spirituality. They never are. They're never going to be. Religion does have the 3 R's, where spirituality does not have 3 R's. Spirituality is someone exploring, finding out things, having an open mind, you searching, questing for God. That's why there's such things as witchcraft and all that, because people are out there trying to combine and commune with nature and God. Okay. Now, when you get the 3 R's, ritual, regulation, and rules, what happens is that you become obligated, and when you don't face up to those, if you don't align yourself with those obligations, you become punished by being excommunicated or being shunned upon or being hated. Okay? That's still going on today. That is a part of religion. Okay? Religion and spirituality, they're different.